Going live. This is Hannibal from TheHannibalTV.com. It's at 1:11 a.m. on October 18th. The new Wrestling Observer came out late last night, and I am going to give you the main notes that I took away from this week's edition for my wonderful 123,000 subscribers and almost 90 million video views I have now. In WWE news, Cain Velasquez did an interview where he said he still has one more show for AAA. It hasn't been confirmed by WWE or AAA that he is going to be doing one more show, but he is saying it. The AAA show he was supposed to do in Los Angeles last weekend was fully canceled. People who bought tickets can get refunds, so it's believed that if he does another AAA show, it would likely be in Mexico. The first Mexico AAA show that he was on drew really well. The second one in MSG was moved from Madison Square Garden to the Hulu Theater inside Madison Square Garden. That is basically a smaller theater, and they didn't sell that out, so he's probably a bigger draw in Mexico. The Eric Bischoff was fired shortly after the second SmackDown taping for their Fox show that he was the executive director on. Eric Bischoff was 64 years old and is being replaced by Bruce Pritchard, who is 56. Bruce Pritchard worked for the WWE previously and has actually been in creative with WWE longer, and apparently he had a fairly big role in creative on SmackDown as well, but he wasn't the director until now. He also worked from TNA in creative and talent relations from 2010 to 2013 and again in 2017. So if any of you were still watching TNA in those years, you would know that it wasn't that great. But when Bruce's podcast first came out, I was a fan of it. Some of the jokes got old towards the end, but I like Bruce, but I wouldn't expect any miracles from him being the new director of SmackDown. Dave Meltzer put in a quote from a WWE official about Bischoff's firing. He didn't name the official, but he said, quote, "Eric had absolutely no vision, and once we were headed into Fox, everything was falling through the cracks. He messed up multiple times with Fox. Eric also had no stamina for the rigors of the job." And what they mean by stamina, I guess, is Vince really this is not a 9-to-5 job. This is almost a 24-hour-a-day job when you're working directly with Vince, and not a lot of people can handle it. We do know that Vince threw out and completely rewrote a couple of scripts that Bischoff had done. A few people were expecting him to show up in AEW, but the fact is he's probably getting a severance package. I mean, I read Bill Watts' book, and when he I don't know if you remember if he was released or he quit his WWE creative job, but he had something like a 3-month severance package. Jerry Jarrett told me in my shoot interview with him, he had a long severance package too, and there's probably a no-compete clause in it. So Eric Bischoff, don't expect him in AEW anytime soon. And again, as I previously stated, has he even been on WWE TV? He's only been working behind the scenes. Most people don't follow the behind-the-scenes dealings in wrestling that watch wrestling. It's only the smart marks and some fans that are interested in all the backstage stuff, or people like me who actually find the backstage stuff way more interesting than the current product. The reason why the Usos and Naomi weren't drafted, as apparently there's no confirmed date for them to return after Jimmy Uso's DUI arrest. And I guess he wasn't allowed into Canada shortly after that arrest too. So I know Canada is really strict on DUIs, but other countries might be a little bit more lenient. Although somehow Jeff Hardy's come into Canada since he's been back with WWE. He has quite an extensive criminal record. So they obviously know how to pull some strings. Vader told me he had an old assault charge too, where he needed to get special clearance to come into Canada when he was working for WWE. And Tatanka told me when I brought him in, I needed to pay for a special visa for him too, for something from his past. I don't know exactly what it was. Strangely enough, for this draft, The Undertaker, John Cena, Goldberg, and Cain Velasquez, 4 of literally the top stars in WWE, weren't even drafted. How much sense does that make? And The Fiend was drafted to a different brand than Seth Rollins, but they're wrestling each other at Crown Jewel, as well as at least one house show, apparently. So the draft was really just something to bring ratings. It's pretty meaningless. And both ratings were down by a large margin for both Raw and SmackDown. So you could say that the draft was a failure. In WWE attendance, starting with NXT, October 10th in Cocoa, Florida, they drew 150 fans. In October 11th in Coral Gables, Florida, which I guess is in the Miami market, they drew 800 fans. And then October 12th in West Palm Beach, Florida, they drew 800 fans. And for their taping at Full Sail University on Wednesday, October 16th, they drew 400 fans. There were 2 house shows this past week in Texas that were both combined shows. And supposedly, from what I understand, there's going to be more combined shows going forward from Raw and SmackDown, which makes the draft make even less sense. But there was no figures given from those shows in Odessa or Amarillo, Texas. The Raw taping on October the 14th in Denver drew 7,000 fans in an arena that can hold 18,007 fans. The SmackDown taping on October 11th in Las Vegas, they drew 7,500 fans. Now, the AEW Dynamite show on October the 16th outdrew both the Raw and SmackDown tapings with 9,000 fans. And I did a video on that, and someone commented, well, AEW is going to a smaller building. Well, what difference does it make when they still outdrew WWE going to bigger buildings? That argument makes no sense. And the other thing is some people said, well, AEW's ticket prices are lower. I have heard that AEW's ticket prices for some events that they've had have been up to $3,000. So they're not exactly cheap tickets for AEW either. NXT also lost to AEW in the ratings war this week. They fell 10% with 700. God, it's too late for me to do this. 700. Okay, I'll just say the numbers because my brain is not working. 711,000. Okay, that's how many viewers NXT had. Sorry that my internet's making this. Where AEW on TNT drew 1,014,000 viewers. They were also slightly down in viewership this week. Supposedly, there's going to be an NXT Japan. WWE was in talks attempting to buy Pro Wrestling Noah and Stardom, but those talks fell through. However, WWE has been also in talks with some big Japanese stars to supposedly work as trainers as part of this WWE Japan. And finally, in WWE news, I don't know this guy very well because I don't watch WWE, but Mike Bennett, who signed a 5-year contract supposedly for a lot of money back in June, is asking to be released from the contract. I guess he's doing an angle now where they're making it seem like his pregnant wife is actually been fathered by someone else. So it's kind of an embarrassing angle. But still, I guess he's not wrestling much. He has barely been used on house shows at all over the past year, but he's still making good money. So as a person that works a normal job for probably way, way, way less money than he makes, and I have to work extremely hard at YouTube to get any revenue, I have zero sympathy for this guy. Stop complaining. For AEW, Luchasaurus suffered a torn hamstring. He's going to be replaced in the tag team tournament for the tag team titles by Marco Stunt, who's also part of that group. Jake Hager is not going to wrestle till after his October the 25th fight in Bellator at the Mohegan Sun Casino against Anthony Garrett, who's 4-2. I saw one of this Anthony Garrett's match. He literally curled up into a ball in one of his fights. Sorry about the disturbance on the screen. I don't know what that is. I switched providers and it's still happening, so I'm going to buy a camera. The service is overall better so far, though, with Rogers than Bell, but it's not perfect. In Ring of Honor news, their show last weekend in New Orleans only drew 600 fans at an arena that drew 6,000 fans for Cody versus Kenny Omega back in 2018. Ring of Honor is having Rush, who is their current champion, fight PCO on December 13th. PCO's contract expires December 1st, but Meltzer believes something is going to be worked out there. Say What Says sounds like Zack Ryder hasn't been used since 2012. I really don't know. He was an asshole to me back when I was in Deep South Wrestling. So I've never been a fan of his. Don't like him. In MLW news, Court Bauer, the CEO of MLW, says likely they're not going to be putting their shows on YouTube. At some point, they're going to stop because they feel they can get better ad rates elsewhere. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like for NWA, I think the first episode has around 500,000 viewers. The second episode has somewhere over 100,000 viewers on YouTube. Billy Corgan is financing that himself. The revenue generated from YouTube with that many views might pay for one of the jobbers on the show. Like it might pay $50 to $100, the combined revenue of those two shows. So that's why they're going to need to find a TV deal to keep going. Impact, which is owned by a television company, aired on Twitch on October 11th and only had 2,839 viewers on average, which is freaking horrible. Like they're owned by a TV company, but I don't know how they afford. They don't draw well. They have to fly all these people in, pay them, and the viewership is just horrible. I tried to watch a bit of the wedding thing with Brian Cage the other week, and it was just god awful, absolutely awful. Mr. says, will you ever do a full shoot with Shelly Martinez? Probably. PCW 20 or PWC 24/7 says thoughts about the NWA pay-per-view. Well, they're going to have to try and do a pay-per-view to try and make money, see if they could possibly keep going on pay-per-views. Or Billy Corgan's a multimillionaire. This might just be a fun project for him, but he's been quoted as saying that that's not financially sustainable. The Real Frisco says, do I think AEW has what it takes to go head up with Raw? Ratings are not far apart, and they're actually outdrawing Raw in attendance. I don't know if that's going to last. I don't know. I'm not a fan of AEW or Raw, so I can't really judge. Like, the only thing I see of Raw is maybe videos that pop up in my Twitter feed at Devon Hannibal, or if it's on, something's on in the gym. If Raw is on at the gym. In AEW, I've seen a few YouTube videos. I tried watching the first show, but after watching the first hour, fast forwarding through most of the second hour, I'm happy that there's competition for WWE, but it's nothing really captured me with AEW, but I'm not against them. I'm neutral for sure. In MMA news, for UFC in Tampa at the Amalie Arena, where Raw recently did their big show with Hogan and Austin a little while ago, drew 10,597 fans for a gate of $897,805. That was the second show there, the first one being April 16, 2016. This one did slightly lower in attendance and gate. This UFC show was supposed to be in San Francisco, but apparently there was an issue with the hotel in San Francisco, so they did it in Tampa. Say What is asking me an interview with Sergeant Slaughter. He still works for WWE, so it's unlikely he would give me an interview. I tried to get one through his contact a few times, but I never got any response. I would call him out on some things, like the story he claims where he beat Billy Robinson easily, which I don't believe. I mean, I believe he fought in Vietnam, possibly. I don't doubt he's tough, but like, we've never heard any stories about him being a legit shooter other than him himself saying that he basically destroyed Billy Robinson in a shoot fight, which is very hard to believe. Michael McDonald says there was 3,000 suicide dives in the last AEW show. I see the same high spots over and over, like it's a normal headlock. That's one thing I did notice. There was way too many spots in the first AEW show, particularly the Cody Rhodes match that I watched the full thing from top to bottom. Like, a lot of these moves, the guy who was wrestling was small, and a lot of these moves looked like they would kill him, but he was just getting back up. So yeah. And PWC 24/7 says seeing wrestlers sell for Marco Stunt is terrible. And I did see that. I tried watching AEW Dark. I fast forwarded through most of it. But one thing that stood out to me about last week's AEW Dark was the Christopher Daniels tag team match against Marco Stunt, when he's doing planchas to the outside against guys that are much bigger than him, and it literally looks like it wouldn't even budge them, and they're like bumping like crazy for him doing a suicide dive. So I don't like phony looking stuff in wrestling. I'm sorry. I don't like the stuff with the hands in the pockets. That's just stupid. Some people have commented on previous videos where I've said this, well, wrestling's not MMA. You shouldn't take it seriously. Well, I've actually been seriously hurt in wrestling matches, so I do take it very seriously. The risks of the injuries are real, and people making a mockery of it makes it look bad to the average fan, and that kind of garbage does not gain more fans overall. And when I'm watching a movie, I wouldn't want to see a guy with his hands in his pockets beating up a gang. Like, I wouldn't want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger do that, or Napoleon Dynamite is probably a closer comparison to that Orange Cassidy with his hands in his pockets beating people up, unless it was a comedy. But yeah, that's just my taste. I respect people that like that, but I personally don't like that. I was trained in the dungeon. My training was very hard, and I take wrestling very seriously. Oh, my dog wants to say hello. She got a haircut. Back to the UFC news. The $50,000 bonuses for the Tampa show went to Cub Swanson and Kron Gracie for Fight of the Night, while Nick Price and Marion Vera took home the 2 Performance of the Night bonuses. The premiere of ESPN's 30 for 30 documentary on the Chuck Liddell's Tito Ortiz feud, which Ortiz did not like, had 609,000 viewers. In Bellator news, King Mo, who had retired last April, is actually going to fight again in his retirement fight in Oklahoma, where he went to college, against Andrew Capel at 195 pounds on November 8th. And you might remember King Mo from Impact. I actually met him at an Impact show I wrestled on in Ottawa in 2017. I had to go the day before, and I had a brief talk with him backstage. He was hanging out with Lashley. They appeared to be friends. Joe Rogan, who I'm sure is not the real Joe Rogan, says, do I think AEW should hire Ryback? What are my thoughts on Ryback? I don't know. I do not know. I know he hasn't done much since he's been released from WWE. You don't really hear about him on the independent scene. Say what says, will GSP ever retire? Apparently, they're still talking about this Khabib GSP fight. It might still happen in 2020. So I don't know why they had that big retirement press conference for GSP if he still wants that. It seems ridiculous, but it seems like that fight might eventually happen if all the stars align. The Real Frisco says the guy that Jericho wrestled for the belt looked like he weighed 90 pounds. Yeah, I'm not a fan of small guys, and I think most mainstream people also aren't a fan of the small wrestlers. There is some hardcore fans that like that, obviously. And I don't know. I'm not a fan of it at all. Even the cruiserweights in WCW were good, but they all looked muscular. Like Rey Mysterio was jacked. Like at least when he did the flying moves, it looked believable that he could take a bigger guy down when that happened. So someone says AEW is filled with boring vanilla midgets. Someone says, I honestly feel WWE should end the draft nonsense. It's nonsense. Eliminate some belts and go back to the way things were many moons ago. Well, yeah, I read on a pay-per-view there was like 10 title matches recently. And it's like, with 10 title matches, that just makes the titles meaningless. Why do you need 2 world titles? That makes no sense when you're constantly diluting the products. And you're not doing that well in drawing fans or ratings. So why not have the very best of the best on the TV shows? Oh, and one other note I forgot to bring up, that WWE did not include NXT in the draft. And it's like, if they want to make it look like a serious third brand rather than a development brand, why didn't you have NXT wrestlers in the draft? And there's actually less crossover with NXT wrestlers right now than the other 2. So yeah, it's a little ridiculous. Killings 76 says they need more guys like the Steiners and Sid Vicious from 98. Yes. Or even Great North Wrestling star, the Blood Hunter, who's wrestling Haku this weekend. He would literally destroy everybody in AEW. So Lori Whiteman says, bring back the Attitude Era. Well, the Attitude Era also had very talented wrestlers and cool wrestlers. I don't know. I'll be honest. Like, a lot of these guys just go back to their hotel rooms and play video games. They live very boring lives. Those Attitude Era stars were actually more like rock stars on the road, with a few exceptions. But Grand Slam Wrestling says he's loving AEW on a massive scale. Goodbye, WWE. So I'll end off with that comment. Have a good night, everyone. I'm also going to post this audio version on the Great North Wrestling podcast on iTunes. Oh, Michael McDonald Says, I hate win-loss records showing up on the screen. Yuck. That I don't get. Why would you? I don't think the win-loss record's going to be a good thing. Don't think so. And someone says Ryback and Great North Wrestling, he wants way, 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 way too much money than he would draw. I did ask him at one point when he was first released, and he just would not draw that much money. The independent wrestling scene, you can't make tickets too expensive, and it's really, really expensive to put on professional wrestling events when you take into all the costs, the advertising, the insurance, the arena rentals, travel, hotels. It's huge. So let's say, I forget how much Ryback wanted to wrestle, but let's say it's $5,000 American a match. Then you take into account the exchange rate is like $1.35 or more. So times 5,000 times $1.35, and that add on his flight and hotel, and see if you'll get the equivalent of that in ticket sales. I don't think so. Master P is also investing in House of Glory Wrestling. Someone mentioned that. I also read that in the Observer. I didn't bring it up because I'm not very familiar with House of Glory Wrestling, other than my buddy Stephen Bonner wrestled for them at one point. Someone says, I think AEW doesn't want to hire the big guys because they don't want to make the rest of the roster look weak. That could be possible. They've got Luchasaurus. And Jake Hager are their two biggest guys, I believe. So someone says they need larger than life superstars. They have Jericho, who is a larger than life superstar. That's pretty much it right now. They still have to build other ones. I truly think they blew it by not hiring Goldberg. They should have hired Goldberg. Because now all the big free agents are tied up. Ryback is not in the same category as the Cain Velasquez's and the Goldbergs, the Undertakers, the John Cena's. If he was, WWE never would have let him go. So, yeah. Anyways, have a great night, everybody. I'm out of here.